Howdy, hello, everybody. Jim Peters here. Welcome to Jim Peters at Night. It's 10:02 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States. That's 7:02 Pacific and 9:02 where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis. About an hour ago, former President Donald Trump was processed by the Fulton County Jail in Atlanta regarding his indictment there on a RICO charges, essentially. Uh, they have charged him with a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. That's what he's been charged with. I'm going to show you, in case you're not going to see it. I'm going to show you his mugshot right there. There it is. It's when I first saw this, I thought it looked digitally manipulated. I gotta admit, I thought it looks a little fakey because of the lighting, but apparently that is it. I have no idea if anybody's touched this up or not. I suppose the Fulton County Jail, I don't think they'd want to make him look good. I mean, obviously that's an unusual picture. He looks a little angry. No shit. I would be too. But we are going down a very dark road here. Now, I'm going to make a prediction right now based on what happened just a few hours ago and what's been happening today. I think that not only is Donald Trump going to win the Republican nomination, I think he will be elected the 47th president of the United States. I think he's going to win. I think this is going to completely and totally blow up in the Democrats' faces. They have weaponized this. It's a charade of the four indictments that Donald Trump has been indicted for. The only one that holds any real legal water is the Mar-a-Lago documents case. Now, and the other thing with that is that there's all sorts of people who also violated that in the past and never even gotten a slap on the wrist, let alone anything. So that's the interesting thing there. However, as been many legal analysts have pointed out, there's a good possibility he did do some of that stuff. So, that's his real problem of the four of them. The rest of them are complete, utter legal charades. Somebody brought this up this afternoon, and I really had to stop and think about it because it's one of those master of the obvious moments where you realize, oh, holy shit, I knew that, but I didn't know that. And that is what this one's name is Fauci Willis, or the she's not the DA of Atlanta. She's not the state attorney general. She's a county prosecutor. Her jurisdiction is the county of Fulton in Georgia only. Now, Fulton County encompasses the city of Atlanta, but that's her jurisdiction. That's it. Now, the only reason she can point to evidence or doings outside of there, and which she does plenty in these indictments, is that she's using the RICO law or the racketeering law, which says that you can go out, at least in Georgia. I don't understand how it works vis-a-vis the federal laws, but you can go outside your jurisdiction to prove something that happened inside your jurisdiction. It's already been brought up that this is probably unconstitutional. Mark Meadows, one of the other 17 people that have been indicted on this, which is that's really, I understand going after Trump, but going after all these, Giuliani's already been prosecuted or processed. His mugshot's already available. That the only reason she can do this is because of that RICO law, and if the judge determines that the RICO law doesn't apply, basically the entire case gets thrown out. She has no jurisdiction over any of this shit, none. And that with the four indictments he's had, there's a good possibility, even a probability, that three of them are going to get thrown out of court. But he's got to go through the process. He was technically arrested tonight. He was arrested and let go. He posted a $200,000 bond, and they want to have this trial in late October. And a lot of people are thinking, well, that's a great way to get Trump. I'm starting to think that a swift and speedy trial is actually to his advantage here. Matter of fact, I don't see anything. The way I see this is not going to go the liberals' way. They think they're going to stop this guy from being elected president. And then you stop and think about this too. All right, I know a lot of people hate this guy's guts. I have friends who hate this guy's guts. They hate him. It's irrational. I said last night when we were talking, after the debate, I have an irrational dislike of Mike Pence. I just don't like the guy. I don't know why. I think it's what somebody said today. It was one word that stuck out to me, and that is he comes off as sanctimonious. I think to me, but yeah, I don't like the guy. I don't, and I know that my dislike of him is irrational. I admit it, but you have a vehement hatred of Trump that's irrational. And okay, I understand he rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but on top of that, why do the Democrats in particular hate Trump? Two reasons. One was brought up by one of our previous guests, and now I have to remember which one. Was it Tapscott? Or I think it was Jazz Shaw, I think, a couple weeks ago said, "We have to understand, Jim, he kept their first female president from being president." That's true. I think that's one of it. And the other thing is, this guy's a true outsider. I mean, you stop and think about this. He's probably the only true outsider who's been elected president ever. I can't think of another person. I mean, okay, you can go back to Woodrow Wilson, who was a college, head of a college, and also kind of got in because of a backroom deal that went bad. There's that. So, I mean, there are a couple other people, but he had nothing to do with politics whatsoever, nothing, and he won. And he wasn't expected to win either. And that, I think, for people who are in the deep state, for people basically whose lives are government, that just completely that could not be tolerated. So now I have said, and of course Trump keeps saying this too, but I don't know what his evidence is. I can point to my evidence, and once again, I like to point out I have no proof whatsoever. I don't, but it's legitimate evidence about the crowd sizes during the 2020 campaign and how that's indicative of the fact that um, Joe Biden didn't win in my mind. But people say, everyone I've told this theory to, everyone acknowledges that I have a point. That's the thing. Everyone does. My point is that I've been in the entertainment business for 50 years, 50 freaking years, literally going back to being a teenager. And all I know is that if one guy's drawing 200 people per event and the other guy's drawing 20,000, the other guy's probably winning. That's and they're going to say, well, there was COVID. All right, okay, there was COVID. And the other thing is, so this is a part that I still don't understand or do understand. Um, People say, well, Jim, you don't understand. They didn't vote. No one voted for Biden. They voted against Trump. And as a matter of fact, I've heard this from a lot of my Democratic friends. Nobody really likes Joe Biden. They just didn't want Trump. I understand that too. But everybody, you're talking about 95% of the people on the planet would have to do that for Biden to legitimately win. So Trump is being arraigned for basically contesting the results of an election, which has been pointed out many, many times before on any level you want to point out. They have come up with the fact that, okay, that Trump attempted to nominate what they called a a set of electors in Georgia, which has been done previously by the Democrats. They've done the same thing more than once. It's been done over and over. All this stuff's been done over and over again, except they've decided they're going to prosecute Donald Trump for it. The one thing that they have going for them is that Fulton County, like DC and like New York City, are extremely Democratic geographic areas. I mean, the DC is considered, from a political standpoint, a nullified jury, and that means the jury's going to vote liberal no matter what evidence you put in front of them. And that happened to what there was some during the Trump administration. There was some, I can't remember who this was. They had an enormous amount of evidence of the fact that this guy did this crime. It was enormous, and the jury still let him off because he was a liberal. Apparently, no, because no one can think of any other reason. It's like the evidence was absolutely overwhelming, and the jury still let him go. And so the point is that in these districts, Trump is there's a good possibility he will be convicted on at least one count by all of these three districts. On appeal, which gets moved out of those areas, he will almost certainly be cleared. Now, but the thing is, that's kind of beside the point. The point is here they're weaponizing the justice in the United States to make certain that a candidate they don't like does not win. And they don't want him to win because now they're afraid of what he might do. Before, I think they just didn't like him or they didn't like the idea that he got elected. You know, I mean the deep state they want to run, and when I mean the deep state, I mean I'm talking about the bureaucratic apparatus of the United States government, which tends to ideologically is overwhelmingly liberal, but doesn't really have anything to do with any particular branch. There's 4 million people in the United States, non-militarily, who work for the federal government, who work for the United States government. And here's a statistic you probably have not heard. The you've heard about the fact that we have historic low unemployment and historic employment. In other words, the people number of people getting employed every month keeps going up and up. That those are technically true statistics. What you haven't heard is that the single biggest hiring arm, the single biggest entity that's hiring is the federal government. The vast majority of people, I don't say the vast, but the majority of people the last few months who have been hired for a new job are working for the federal government. They are trying like gangbusters to basically make this giant octopus as big as they possibly can. And I think that they're thinking, well, our time might be limited, and it might be, yeah. And so the bureaucracy never ends, never grows, and at the it never at the debate last night, Nikki Haley brought this up, and I got to give her credit for doing this. Also, by the way, she ended up polling very well last night. Basically, the surprise is everybody thought Vivek would end up coming polling number one. No, actually, DeSantis did. Those numbers just came in this afternoon. Although it was not a pure, it was only plurality, not a majority by any means. But DeSantis actually drew the most positive votes, and Vivek was second, and Nikki Haley was third, and they were the only three people of the eight who came in the double digits. So, but Nikki said, we have to acknowledge the fact that it's just not the Democrats who have increased the size of the government. The Republicans have too, and God damn it, we have. Or we. I'm not a Republican. This show is not a Republican show. Yeah, I lean conservative, libertarian. This is not a Republican show. And she's absolutely right about that. The fact of the matter is, at some point, if we don't rein government in, and I'm not just talking about the debt, I'm talking about the number of people and the payroll of the federal government, if we don't rein it in, all hell's going to break loose. Now, the other thing is Nigel Farage, the guy in Britain who started the Brexit thing, and he's had a really interesting go over there over the last few months, because I don't know if you heard about this. He was denied banking services. His bank, that I don't know which bank it is in Britain, that he'd been banking at for years and years and years, sent him a letter and said, well, we're closing your accounts, and did not give him a reason. They just said, we're closing your accounts. You're no longer a customer here. And he subsequently could not find another bank to take him on. And it was apparently entirely politically motivated. And he sued his original bank and won. And not only that, the CEO of that bank ended up having to step down because of this. So I mean, and the thing is that could happen here. That's terrible. It's awful. I mean, in America, not only in America, worldwide, if you basically can't get a bank account, you're not a real person. I mean, and so the banks are starting to figure out they have this power. But at any rate, he has said, pardon me, I got an itch. He has said, and I think he might be right about the fact that he said that if Donald Trump were to be actually thrown in jail, we might end up having a civil war in this country. And I hate to say it, but I think he's got something there. I've always said, and I'm not advocating this at all. I mean, um, I hate to say this because people say I'm actually advocating for this. I'm not the least bit. I'm just saying this is my prediction and my speculation that that what happened on January 6th, 2021 is so misunderstood, especially by the liberals, but actually by everybody, that not only could it happen again, if it happens again, it's going to be way worse. my thinking has been, and I've said this, I know a lot of people disagree with me. I ran this by Jazz, I ran this by other guests. Most people disagree with me, but I'm still sticking with this. If Donald Trump had not shown up at that rally on January 6th, the same thing would have happened. Not only did he not provoke the rally, it kind of has nothing really to do with him. I mean, yeah, those people are his supporters, and then you have to understand what of the rally itself. Supposedly, and even the Park Service does the official counts. They said this. It was the largest single rally attendance in Washington history. The actual count was 500,000 people. I have heard that actually a million to 1.5 million people actually showed up. A huge number of people, way usurped any other rally that's ever been there. I Had a Dream, Martin Luther King, all that stuff. No, the January 6th rally, I'm not talking about the storming the Capitol, the actual rally was the single largest attended rally in Washington, D.C. history. And of those 500,000 to 1 million people, whatever it is, the count, it was so large, the count got lost, basically. About 2,000 of them stormed the Capitol, okay? And yeah, those people are fervent Trump supporters. Correct. That's true. But they didn't do that because of Trump, or they didn't do that because Trump asked them to, and they didn't do that because of him. They did that because they're really, really pissed off. And why are they pissed off? Because in 2020, Antifa went around the country and wrecked 20 American cities and caused $2 million in damage and killed at least 23 people, and nothing ever happened. Nothing. So now, just tonight, this afternoon, Andy Nago, a guy who writes for it, he's actually the editor now of the Post Millennial. He's been covering Antifa for years, and they beat the crap out of him on one of these. I think it was in Portland, at one of those rallies. They beat the crap out of him, and the police refused to arrest the people who beat him up. They refused, so he sued them in civil court, and he won. They did not show up for the hearing. He won by default, and he admits he's probably never going to collect most of not any of the money, but still, those people were pissed about that, about the fact that all this destruction, and not only that, people got killed and nobody was held accountable. Nobody. And people are still pissed off about this. So you go around and you throw Trump in jail. I swear to God, and once again, I like to point out, I'm not advocating for this at all. This is my prediction, not advocation. That you do that, and you're going to have hundreds of thousands of American men showing up in Washington with guns. That's going to happen. I think we would have a civil war. I think Farage is right, and I want to just point out, like Trump, Farage has a very good record of predicting shit. He predicted Brexit. There's a lot of stuff, and of course they don't like him because of that. Now, and the other thing too, it's just a matter of plain talent. People are envious of people with talent. I voted for Trump in 2016, even though I had no idea what kind of president he was going to be, and I thought there's a good possibility this will be a disaster. Why did I vote for him? I voted for him because I knew his opponent, Hillary Clinton. I knew she was going to be a disaster as a president. I knew that this was going to go completely sideways. She had no business. She has no business in the office whatsoever. She doesn't have. I won't say she's incompetent, but she doesn't have that sort of talent, and she certainly doesn't have the talent of her husband, who I still regard as one of the best presidents of the 20th century. So there you go. Yeah, you want to call me a Republican? I just advocated for a Democrat. Just because you're sleeping with the most talented politician of the 20th century doesn't mean it rubs off on you, literally or figuratively. It does not rub off. But where was I? Because I was just thinking, you guys got to call me up. There's a number down here, JimAtKnight.com/call. I just want to point this out in case you didn't know this. That's not the instructions for how to call in. That's actually where you call in. You go to that page, you click the button at the top of the screen, you check your camera and mic really quick in the preview page, and then you're on. It's simple as pie. I know this is completely different. I know those of you on Rumble right now, I'm not interacting with the chat. I'm not. I want you to call in. That's the idea of the show. And you can call in without putting your picture on the screen. You can choose no video in the preview, and it will be audio only. You can do that. If you choose no video, you get the chance to upload an avatar, and you can amuse me with that. I'd appreciate it. That would go on the screen instead. But yeah, you should call me up. Well, we got a lot to talk about here. So I was talking about Hillary Clinton. Oh, so I voted for I voted for Trump because I knew there's a good possibility he'd be disaster. But like I said, it was an unknown quantity versus a known quantity. I knew she was going to be disaster. Well, as it turned out, Trump did a really good job under really, really horrendous circumstances and situation. I mean, the guy was hounded constantly more than any other president for 4 years, and he still turned in a quite a stellar performance. I mean, Ramaswamy said that last night that he's easily the best president so far in the 21st century, no doubt about it. And yeah, and once again, if you think think I'm in the tank for the Republicans, we had George W. Bush was a failure. There's just no getting around it. You know, he largely failed. Of course, everyone does a few good things. Carter was a failure too, but for most of you watching, that's before you were born. So so you don't know about that. I still remember. But George W. Bush did have his moment. Stood on the 9/11, stood at ground zero with a megaphone and said, "We will catch these bastards." And everyone rallied, and that was good. And I'm not going to just sit here and tell you he's evil, but no, his presidency was largely a failure, and that's because he has never done anything. And that's also why this is the amazing thing. The problem here is we had two two-term failure presidents back to back, George W. and Barack Obama. And I actually thought when Barack Obama left office, I thought, well, he's going to be the worst president in my lifetime. And I was not. I was disappointed because the guy who came after him, it turned out to actually be worse. It's unbelievable. I mean, why are these guys have enormous amounts of stuff in common. You never think it because one of them can't talk to save his life, and the other one talks too much. But they actually do in that they have the thinnest resumes of any of the two guys who were ever president ever. Neither one of them basically had ever done anything. And you need experience to do a job like this. That's all there is to it, which is one of the reasons Trump was actually good at it because Trump has had, I call them, it's hard to measure while you measure this sort of stuff. I call them episodes. And episodes are basically like negotiating points in your life, whatever it is, whether it's, you're getting married or you're getting starting a new job or you're literally negotiating a contract or whatever. People go through episodes. I've gone through more than most people. I have. I know that. I'm very well aware of that, and it changes my outlook on life. I've experienced more stuff and more, frankly, more shit than most people have, both positive and negative. But I look like a guy like Trump, and I mean, he's way, way ahead of me, way ahead. I know that. He's way ahead of most people. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody in the country that has more experience doing stuff than Donald Trump. So he's got that to lean on. And also, the other thing is, and Vivek shows this, he kind of shows this thing too. Everyone says, well, Vivek is not going to win. I know he's not going to. I also don't think Vivek's going to be vice president. I'm gonna announce this right now. I am keeping my options open. I'm not changing my mind. But I actually think that Trump will pick Tim Scott as his vice president because Scott's unbelievably optimistic, almost to a fault. I mean, in some ways, it keeps him from getting noticed, but also he's a sitting senator right now, so he is plugged into the legislative branch. Vivek Vivek is a sparkling personality, but he would not help Trump in any real way. He really wouldn't. And I don't think, and I think this is rightly so. Trump needs more help than he does the desire to set somebody up for 2028. You know, so I think he will pick Tim Scott as vice president, and so we're going to mark this unless I change my mind. August 24th. Let's see what happens. At any rate, yeah. So getting back to what I was saying about the fact that it's storming the Capitol. Yeah, I think that Nigel Farage is right. If Trump actually ends up in jail behind bars in a jail cell, I think there could be serious trouble. I really do. And once again, I want to point out I'm not advocating for the trouble. I'm just saying that's what I think's going to happen. And also, one other thing, and I'm predicting this too. I think this is going to completely backfire on the Democrats, the liberals, completely. I think, okay, they want to do this trial early because she thinks it's gonna be terrible because it'll be dragged out or it's a year before. I think that will be to Trump's advantage, and I think he knows that, which is the reason I don't think they're gonna fight it too hard. Well, they will fight the trial, on principle altogether, they will. I mean, it should be thrown out, and I don't know who the judge is, but, there's a possibility. Right now, I would say there's an odds-on chance. I would bet money that some of it will be thrown out, at least. I don't know about all of it. But once again, if they throw the RICO part out, the racketeering part, she doesn't have a case. It's done. So, yeah, so I'm also, and I think this goes without saying, I'm predicting that Trump is gonna win, election in 2024, and it's gonna be really close again because, yes, 40%, at least 30% or a third of the public hates his guts. There's a third of the public that will never vote for him ever. But as time goes on here and more stuff, I mean, at this point, the Bidens have you talking about racketeering, the Bidens have a criminal enterprise going, and they the oversight committee in Congress has basically proved it at this point. I've said, okay, there's two things they don't have. They don't have money going directly into Joe Biden's bank account from a foreign entity. They don't have that, and they don't have Biden doing any of this while he was actually president. It's all while he was vice president afterwards. None of it's happened. None of it's recent. Well, on one of those two things about the fact they don't have money going right into Joe's bank account, well, I found out a couple weeks ago, very conveniently, that the legal definition of bribery in the United States is if you get money sent to your children's bank accounts or grandkids that are 10 years old and have no ability to do anything, let alone hold a job. And that's what's happened. And at that point, that's the legal definition of bribery. And at that point, he's corrupted. And that's happened. And they proved that already. So it's what's happened here is so blatant. And I keep hearing analysts saying, "Well, where where how come no one you this should have been stopped a long time ago." Even this thing about this thing about the election interference, in Fulton County. It's been 30 months since that happened, and they waited until now to charge him. Well, geez, I wonder why. Holy shit. And they're probably wondering, the thing is, if he hadn't run for president again, they probably wouldn't have charged him. It's been speculated a long time. People have said that if Trump somehow came to, to Jack White and said, "Look, here's the deal. I'm not going to run for president if you absolve the charges." They disappear in a day. I mean, this entire exercise is to keep him from running and potentially winning the presidency. Now, the other thing is they cheat to high heaven on the election. I do truly think the 2020 election was actually cheated in the terms. I think somebody's fucked with the vote count. I do think that. Now, are the Republicans any better? No, because there's real strong evidence that the Republicans cheated on the 2000 and 2004 elections. That would be Bush and Gore and Bush and Kerry. There's really strong evidence. You want to get your mind blown, and I know you're going to probably laugh at me because this guy does not have a reputation for being exactly accurate. But there's a book that Jesse Ventura wrote around 2010 called American Conspiracies. There's one chapter in that book that regards this about the cheating, what he alleges is cheating during the 2000 and 2004 elections. But the problem with this chapter, I own the book. I've read this many times, and it's frightening because of the detail he gets into and who, what, when, where, and why. I mean, he names names, he names places, he names dates, he names amounts of money that are being transferred. I mean, the story is extremely well put together. So there's only really two alternatives I can see here. I mean, obviously there's some variation, but I mean, I generalize. This is what I do here on the show. He got this right or he completely made it up. Total one or the other. It's like it's either fabricated or it's real. There's really no way you get around it. He also points out the fact that there was supposed to be a hearing about this in Congress, and the day before the hearing, the star witness for the quote unquote prosecution ended up dying in a air helicopter crash. Yeah, isn't that convenient? God, how often does that happen? It just happened a few days ago. The guy who went up against Putin, he died in an airplane crash. God, who would have thought that? It's like, how did that happen? Oh, man. Hey, give me a call, jim@night.com/call. Want to talk to you. I want to get to the point on Thursdays we do this show that it's all calls. But the thing is, you guys got to call in first. I know we're just getting started. We're finishing. This is our third week here where we're finishing up. This is our 12th show. I know, so we're just getting started. Literally, it's our 12th show. So, yeah. So you guys got to learn to call in. It's painless. I put your face on the screen. We talk. It's been done. People have called. We've only had since we've started here and there's 12 shows, we only had a handful of callers, but people have called in. I've asked everyone who's called in, is it hard? And everyone said it's easy as pie. Matter of fact, David from San Francisco, longtime caller, my former radio show, he said it was harder to, to find my website than it was to call in. And he's probably right. That's probably true. All right. So I want to move on here. I'm not going to, I was thinking about running the bumper music, but no, I'm not going to. Oh, well, no. Oh, let's just say, let's run it. And if you're looking at the screen and wondering why we're nowhere near as good looking as the guy that's in the bumper photo, we've been having trouble with the lighting here since we started. Now we're taking a week off next week. We're going to do a show on Monday. And by the way, this is really important. Our guest on Monday is David Strom, the associate editor of hotair.com. He's hilarious. Guy's a fantastic writer. I strongly recommend you go to hotair.com anyway, because Jazz Shaw writes for Hot Air too. And he's going to be our guest on Monday. But after that, we're going to take a week off. And then we're coming back the day after Labor Day here in the U.S. That's September 4th. We're coming back on Tuesday, September 5th. And in the meantime, I'm going to spend an entire week getting my shit together here and figuring this out. But we've been going back and forth on the lighting in our little studio here forever, and we got to fix it. Because, yeah, I look bad. I know it. I look bad and old. Now, so you're thinking, oh, Jim, how hard can that be? But here's the problem. We're running a green screen. That's not a window behind me. That's a picture of downtown Minneapolis. Oh, and by the way, and I've said this before too, we're in Northeast Minneapolis, right across the river from downtown. That is almost the view out our window. It's not quite, but almost. It's like that's legit. But we've been running a green screen so we can run that background. And to run the green screen, we need a certain amount of lighting, and it's completely screwing everything up. And we gotta figure this out. We do. This is not good. So I ran the bumper music because this show basically happens in three parts. First part is a yak monologue for about 20 to 30 minutes. Second part, we have a guest on for about 20 to 40 minutes usually. Oh, and by the way, I have to tell you, I've had David Strom on my radio shows at least half a dozen times. Him and I can talk forever. I mean, it's like he's usually goes way over time on the guest segment. So don't be surprised if that happens on Monday too. Okay, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about oh, okay. So yeah. Jesus Christ. What am I talking about? Um, oh, okay. So the thing is, so yeah, the lighting's bad. So we're gonna fix that. So yeah, we're gonna spend a week tweaking a whole bunch of stuff here. And I'm hoping when we come back, for the near future, we'll have at least 3 guests a week out of the 4 days we're on. Also, the other thing, I didn't really bring this up at the top of the show, but starting next week, we're going back to our original starting time of 11 p.m. Eastern. I made that decision this afternoon. I was going to wait till after we got back from um, the Labor Day vacation, but the numbers are already in. It's pretty obvious. We're going back to 11 p.m. So this is the last show we're going to do that we're going to do at 10 o'clock. So there's that too. So we got those shows in 3 parts from my monologue and a guest, and then the third part. When I want to take your calls, but in lieu of you not calling up, I have quote unquote other stuff. And the thing is, I don't want to. The weird just like my radio show, the first part of this program is pretty much de devolved into the news. I mean, I feel some obligation to talk about what happened today, especially because all the other goddamn fucking news outlets on broadcast radio and television are so bad at it. Uh, And I know you're thinking, why do you want to get your news from a stammering, studying idiot with a giant head? I'll tell you why. Because the thing is, I process it. I watch the nightly newscasts on broadcast television. It's just now you may think that's dead, but it's astonishing how many people still watch them. I mean, they have a I think every night the three of them collectively draw about 8 million people. Not too shabby, you know. There's very you're right now you're lucky if you can find a drama that draws more than 1 million people. So okay, so they could run their drug ads. They pay Nora O'Donnell $5 million a year for reading a teleprompter and looking fantastic. But there's no context. And not only that, they're so liberally biased. And this is the other thing, I'm talking to a friend of mine today. So hold on a second. I want to check something here. I'm talking to my friend about the debate last night, and we're talking about Ron DeSantis, my liberal friend. And she was saying about the fact that DeSantis, is not really a very charismatic person, and that's true. That's true. And then, she went on about the fact which was expected or not, or kind of expected about the fact that she's really, really pissed off about DeSantis and that whole thing about in the schools about teaching children that slaves use valuable skills during their slavery or learn valuable skills. This got so much play on the mainstream press. Here's what didn't get play on the mainstream press. The two guys that wrote that syllabus for that curriculum are not only both African American men, they both came from slavery. They both have slavery in their families. And they wrote that, not DeSantis. And on top of that, there's 192 points in that curriculum. That's the only one that anybody had any problem with. And they pulled that out so that they could show everybody, look how terrible Ron DeSantis and the white people in Florida are. Well, African Americans wrote that. And these guys, they've been interviewed. They stood up for what they said. They said, yeah, it's not a matter of, whether that's racist or not. And they said, unfortunately, that's a true statement. It's like, um, what's the guy? Oh, Jimmy the Greek. This is years ago. I'm going back years ago now. This is like 1980, right? A guy named Jimmy the Greek was a uh, football analyst for CBS News, for CBS Sports. And he said one day, someone asked him, he said, or the question was, why do you think there's a preponderance of African American athletes in the NFL? And he said, well, part of it is the way they were raised, in the sense that he said, if you go back to um, the Civil War era, the slavery era, he said, uh, people, African Americans were literally bred to have certain physical characteristics, like big thighs, or powerful thighs, powerful legs, and he lost his job for. Remember, he lost his career, but unfortunately, that's a true statement. I mean, that's terrible. Yeah, it may be awful, but that's a true statement. So the question is, what's is something you don't like something just because it's true? Maybe you should point out another thing. Yeah, it may be abhorrent, but that doesn't mean it's false. And these two guys who wrote this curriculum, that was where they're coming from. They said, yeah, we're not saying this is a good thing. We're just saying this is a fact. And that is, African American slaves learned certain valuable skills through slavery, and then when they were freed, applied it to their free lives. That's a fact. Now, and so I'm listening to my friend here, and she's talking about. I didn't try to correct her because I know what's going on here. I know they. If I bring that up, and I've heard it a million times from my liberal friends, they will say, "Well, I don't think this is what they'll say to me. I don't think you're getting your information from correct sources." That's what they say. And the fact of the matter is, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't have a clue. And this was a perfect example. And I'm bringing this up because it made me realize, think about the fact, I'm talking about the broadcast news networks. I don't think liberal America, which consists about of half of the population, I don't think they realize how much the mainstream media lies to them whole cloth. And I understand they don't want to buy it. I understand that. It's the New York Times. They've been in business for 150, 160 years. They're the gray lady. They're the newspaper of record. They lie through their teeth now. This is only in the last 10 years, but they do. They become an organ for the Democratic Party. They've completely lost any. I mean, there's one thing about being objective through the lens of your bias. I mean that everyone does that. That's it's not that anymore. Now they're deliberately creating falsehoods to try to convince people. And the reason they do this, and the reason the Democratic Party does this, is because they know that 20 to 30% of the populace will buy it hook, line, and sinker. That's the reason. Now, do the Republicans do this too? Not as much. I'd say, yeah, they do, but not as much. And not only that, conservatives are relentlessly critical of themselves. This is the other thing. You got the liberals are a beehive mentality. They will join the collective and always work for the collective, always. The conservatism is based on individuality. It's the rights of the individual, and we will bitch and moan about shit we don't like, and I will too. Which is, I think one reason is that's the reason we make better talk show hosts. And I've said this before, it's no secret. Liberal talk radio or liberal talk media in the United States basically doesn't work. I mean, yeah, you got MSNBC, they're propped up by a giant, giant corporation, and Joe Scarborough's on in the morning. Oh my God, it's like that is such a train wreck. It's unbelievable. I mean, that guy talking about selling your soul. Holy shit. He used to be a Republican. Oh my God. It's like unbelievable. And he's got his wife there. He stopped his co-host. I don't you can't. Anyway, my point is, no, on talk radio, liberal talk radio basically hasn't worked. I mean, you had a few exceptions. There's Tom, what's his name? Hartman. Is that his name? He's done okay. There's a couple other people. There's a woman who's done Stephanie, what's her name, who's kind of done okay. But I mean, there are exceptions. There are. But of course, there's exceptions to everything. But as a general rule, liberal talk radio hasn't worked, which is the reason there are virtually no liberal talk radio stations. Now, you got NPR, and you got public radio, which is essentially is one giant, giant liberal talk radio station, but they don't bill themselves as that. Like the talk radio station here I listen to locally, which is owned by iHeart. Uh, we have four conservative talk radio stations in town. I mean, they have no problem telling you in the bumpers, we're conservative. They'll tell you. Well, NPR would never tell you that in a million years. They will never come out and tell you that they're liberal, but God, they are. I'll be damned. How did I bring all that up? Oh, yeah, because I don't think my friends or liberal people in America, and the thing is, we need liberal people in America. We need them. I mean, the yin and yang of politics should yin and yang, and it should be go back and forth. But right now, we we have one party is basically completely disillusioned by their own media, and so they don't know what the truth is. They don't. Now, and that's what my friends would tell me, that I don't know what the truth is. Well, first of all, I read way, way more news than they do from way, way more sources. Now, and not only that, because of my experience, I'm really good at smelling a rat. It's like the thing what happened to Jesse Smollett in Chicago. Right away, there's a whole bunch of people who knew that this did not smell right. You know, so you got stuck. You got beat up on a snowy night in Chicago by a bunch of people who said they were MAGA in front of a Subway. There's no MAGA people in outside during a snowstorm. It's like, no, there's none of this made sense. None of it. After you do what I've done for a number of years, you start to be able to just smell that stuff. You know, so um, I don't know. I'd like to think I call them as I see them. You know, But I'm gonna move on to what I was going to talk about in the 3rd block tonight, which, like I said, is other stuff, and that is the UFO stuff, because last night, it was actually really funny, and I've said this before, I think Chris Christie's being paid to run for president by some Democratic operative somewhere, George Soros or somebody. I think they're paying him because his only this is my opinion, my speculation, I have no proof of this at all. Uh, I think that they're basically paying him to trash Trump. His only real um, uh, role in the entire this entire process seems to be to trash Trump. So at the end of the show last night, well, was it McCallum asked Christie, "What do you think about the UFO stuff?" And Christie said, "Oh my God," he said, "I get the UFO question, huh?" He said, I may be from New Jersey, but we're not that much different." It was really funny. He handled it really well. I gotta say, also, he didn't answer the question. There's that too. But I just want to. There was an article come out recently about the fact that this has been going on pervasively for like 20 years longer. The black triangles. Maybe you've heard about if you've seen. I've seen one. I have low and slow, really, really up close. I've had two UFO encounters in my life, and that was one of them. And that was about uh, roughly 10, 12 years ago. I've actually lost track of the date, but I saw one, and I can. This is really interesting. It flew right. I stopped my. I'm driving south of the Twin Cities, south of Minneapolis, St. Paul, right outside of what is considered the border of the metro. And when you get outside of the border of the metro, immediately you get farmland. I'm specifically, if you know the metro, I'm driving south out of Hastings, Minnesota, which is on the southeast corner of the Twin Cities metro. And literally, when you drive out of the city limits, you're immediately into farmland. I mean, like literally, it's not even a block. It's the city starts, and you're in a farm, and you're driving through farms. And I was driving there, and all right, I'm gonna just tell the story. So I'm watching from that vantage point where I'm at. You can see the landings and takeoffs from Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, which is about from that point, maybe about 25 miles, and it's northwest of the point that I was at, but you can see them clearly. You can even see the planes that are parked in circular orbit waiting to land. You can see them, and it's at late at night, and I'm driving, and I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, "Oh my God, that's looking pretty, pretty, looking pretty." And then I'm looking at, holy shit, that's not an airplane. And so this giant, giant triangle flew over my head. I stopped the car and got out. I'm in the middle of fields. It's a farmland. It's a paved 2-lane road. And I stopped the car and got out, and this massive thing flew right over my head. And I was just dumbstruck. But I have to tell you, I don't you know, I don't know if I should trust my gut reaction. My gut reaction looking at this thing was, "That's one of ours." I remember that's what I'm telling that's what I'm telling myself in my that's not from space. That's one of ours. And I have no idea why I thought that. I don't. My theory is that, and this has been going around the UFO community for like 3 decades now. Uh, I think we have taken some of these crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft that we have, and we have re-engineered or reverse engineered them, and we've started to build this shit. That's what I think, and I think a lot of these things, including the things that the airmen off the Nimitz encountered in 2004 and the Roswell in 2014, all that stuff, I think there's a likelihood that those things are actually ours. Now, does that mean there's nothing coming from space? No. Like I said, I think we have those things because of all the crashed ET shit we've already recovered. That's what I think. But it's been brought up many times. I'm reading an interview today with Nick Pope. I was reading about this, and he's been around. You look at any UFO documentary or Ancient Aliens or any of that shit, he's like on there all the time. So his claim to fame is that for I think 5 years, I think it was from 1996 to 2001, he was the head of the UFO desk for the Ministry of Defense and in Great Britain. I don't know at that time if that was a secret, an actual secret designation, if the public, if anyone was publicly aware of the UFO desk, but he was running it. It was his thing, and apparently, it literally was just him and a couple of assistants. That was it. It was not a very, very big thing, but his job was to investigate UFOs for the Royal Air Force. That was his job. And he pointed out, he's talking about some of the very famous incidences in Britain where they saw these black triangles. Because for many years, there was supposedly a rumored program in the United States black budget military for something called Project Aurora. And a lot of people thought, and this apparently in 1983, I think it is. I'm pulling this out of my butt. I think in 83, this accidentally made a line item on a military budget, and got immediately taken out because no one was supposed to see it. But it was enough people saw it to make them realize that the program might be real. Could be misinformation too. You never know. And I don't put that past the military at all. But at any rate, Project Aurora was supposed to be either a spacecraft or an airplane that was basically completely triangular in shape. And supposedly was supposed to replace the SR-71 Blackbird, which was a very, very famous black, the long black aircraft that they've been flying around for a million years. That I think reached a top speed of Mach 1.6. Am I right about that? You know, well, that's 60% faster than the speed of sound, or probably it's roughly 1,200 miles an hour. Roughly, depends how you measure that. The black triangles have been estimated to be able to accelerate up to about 18,000 miles an hour. When we have nothing, to this day, we have nothing in our arsenal. And as far as we know, no one else does that can go that fast. That was true of the stupid Tic Tac things that the Nimitz pilots saw too. And Pope's point is that we would not test anything in front of or around real military exercises because there's a very good possibility that stuff would be shot down. He's right about that. Except I still think maybe they did it anyway. And I don't know if they want to, there's another thing too. This is actually kind of funny. The particular incident that he is referring to happened in Britain on March 31st, 1989, is it? I think it was. Well, the next day in the United States is April Fool's Day. And he said, well, if you wanted something to hit the papers, and he's got a point. It's almost like they were toying with us, And, he said, well, are the ETs actually are they that in tune to what we got going on? If you wanted to hit the papers the day after, which in '89, there was no internet, well, that'd be the perfect day to do it. Which is, and so, he thinks, even he thought that might have been a little bit of a clue that this was domestic, that we were doing, because we know about April Fool's Day. I don't know if the gray aliens do or not. So I mean, he's got a point, but the point is that I don't know if that would keep them from doing it. Matter of fact, I think it would be the challenge. See, their thing is, well, what happens? His logic is, you could actually risk one of these spacecrafts being shot down. You could, and then what happens? Holy shit! All hell breaks loose. And we got the Nimitz would end up recovering it. And then what is this thing? Well, it has American markings on it or in it, and say, well, where did this? And then the whole thing's completely, your secrecy is completely blown to smithereens. But on the other hand, you've got something that's so incredibly powerful. The chances of that happening are probably pretty nil. I mean, those Tic Tacs were also recorded. The best guess anybody had going through the radar data was that they could hit a maximum speed, or they were going a maximum speed of 18,000 miles an hour. That's really, really fucking fast. Now, let me just a little, that's about Mach 20, roughly. And we have nothing that even comes close to that. So this is, I don't know, it's going to be very, very interesting. No one, Christopher Mellon has said this, and he's absolutely right. Nobody in the government wants to say the A word, and the A word is aliens. Nobody wants to say it. Nobody does, even though there's no discernible or rational explanation for any of this shit. None of it. So, any rate, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So, look, we'll be back next Monday. On Monday, we're going to be back at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, our original posted time. We tried an experiment for 4 days. Well, 3 if you don't count the debate last night. And I came to the conclusion already it didn't work. So we're going back to our original time. We're going to stay there. We're doing one show next Monday, the 28th of August. David Strom is going to be our guest. Then our next show is going to be Tuesday, September 5th, the day after Labor Day. So we're taking a whole week off. And you think I'm not going to be working, but I am. I got to figure this shit out. I want to thank you folks for watching. Really appreciate it. I'm Jim Peters. This is Jim Peters at Night. We're on Mondays through Thursdays in the evening. Hope you join us again. Thanks. I'll see you.